Why are people launching fireworks when it is not the 4th of July?
Oh my God, they're launching them here too.
The only saving grace is that I was like, why isn't the dog going crazy? We bought her a Thunder shirt, and I think it's working.
I need a Thunder shirt. With everything going on in America right now, I need a Thunder shirt.
With the state of things, where is my Thunder shirt?
The only thing that is keeping me any sort of hope and like keeping me going is the fact that Wicked is now moving up a week.
Excuse me. When we are watching Wicked, we are going to know who the president is. I'm going to throw up.
Well, if Trump becomes president, we won't get Wicked Part 2. It's literally part of Project 2025. Project2025.org, first thing on the thing. They get Wicked Part 1. We never release Wicked Part 2.
It furthers the gay agenda too much.
The Supreme Court will rule, so vote blue.
Let that be enough motivation, if nothing else.
Vote blue for Wicked Part 2.
On the whole, I've been a saint to those poor unfortunate souls.
Hello, and welcome to Poor Unfortunate Podcast. I'm Connor Perkins.
And I'm Caroline A. Meddy.
Welcome to all of our returning listeners. It's great having you back here with us. And welcome to any new listeners. Thank you so much for hitting play. Please also remember to hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. That way all of our episodes download to your device and you don't miss out on anything. And then everybody, once we get to the end, we're all going to hit 5 stars and leave a written review wherever you're listening to the podcast. This is the best thing that helps us get seen in search results, helps us get suggested to other people. And going beyond just a suggestion, how about you share it with a friend and be like, hey, I think that you would really like this podcast. Please listen to it. Like everybody, if we can just like text one friend, like the link to the podcast, I would love you forever.
Put it in a group chat. Then you hit all these people with one single text and then you can all talk about it. It's cute.
Baby.
Cute.
That's in this season.
It's in.
So we are now back again to the beginning of our second cycle. This is our Rant and Rave episode. Caroline, why don't you tell the folks at home what we're doing?
Absolutely. So, if you're up to date on our most recent episode of Caroline, What's New? Feels so silly to say my own name like that.
I love it.
We talked about the changes coming to Walt Disney World and Disneyland as they relate to Genie Plus and how everything that used to be making its home in Genie Plus is now going to be a lightning lane in some way, shape, or form. And so it got us thinking about ride queues and, what are those ride queues that every time we want to go for that lightning lane and skip the wait? And what are the queues that we think are really well done and we actually enjoy waiting on? So that had us landing on 2 new what in this ride tier system today would be considered e-ticket attractions in Walt Disney World, and one is in Disneyland as well, that are on the new side. They're big ticket attractions, and one has a really excellent queue that we're going to rave about, and one has a not so great queue that we are going to rant about. So Connor, you have the rant.
Yeah, I do.
Damn, he's already mad. He's already mad.
I'm already mad. I'm already mad.
He goes, steamed. Yeah, I do.
All right. So on my last trip to Walt Disney World, I was really, really excited to see everything that was new, especially when it comes to Epcot because it's like my favorite park. And I haven't been to Disney World in a very, very long time. For the first time in about 30 years, we got a pretty major expansion to the World Showcase with the Ratatouille section in the France Pavilion. So I had some high expectations as I approached the standby line for Remy's Ratatouille adventure. What I wasn't prepared for was to stand in over 2 hours of one of the most torturous queues of my life.
Absolutely agree.
In comparison to many other queues, it's perfectly fine. But for a modern attraction, the queue for Remy's Ratatouille adventure in Epcot is not good. Disney knew what would be coming in terms of guest interest and the high standards that we have come to expect for the ever-increasing standby lines. But in terms of the storyline, the design, and the physical layout, The queue for Remy's Ratatouille adventure falls short, and it shouldn't have.
Yes.
So, before I move on, I just want to mention my sources. We've got Wikipedia, we've got Thrill Data, allears.net, Attractions Magazine, they had a video ride through, and also my personal experience, baby.
That's right.
So, as usual, I've got some background information for you.
Yes.
So, Remy's Ratatouille adventure officially opened in the France Pavilion on October 1st, 2021, after a soft opening on August 20th, 2021. This attraction is nearly identical to the attraction that opened in 2014 in Walt Disney Studios Park of Disneyland Paris. This ride is very popular, as it is family-friendly, and it has no height or age restrictions. According to Thrill Data, who aggregates a lot of the average wait times over a period of time of the ride's lifetime and everything, according to their data, the historical average wait time for the attraction is 74 minutes in Epcot, with a historical maximum wait time of 240 minutes.
I have seen it. It's insane.
I've walked it.
Oh.
The length of the attraction, 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Some more details. There are 2 rows to each vehicle that each seat about 3 people with an average capacity of 2,220 riders per hour. So I'm going to give you a little overview of the attraction, but I'm not going to be talking about the attraction itself. I'm going to be focused on the queue. So I'll tell you about the attraction, which I think is going to be important for you to understand the queue as well.
Mm-hmm.
The ride has guests shrink down to the size of a rat and board trackless Ratmobiles on the rooftop of Gusteau's restaurant. Then guests join Remy and the spirit of Gusteau in a loose, kind of inspired by / alternate story within the timeline of the film as they decide what dish to prepare at Gusteau's. As you fall through the glass ceiling panel into the kitchen, your Ratmobiles scurry through the kitchen, dodging chefs, and eventually into the dining room, where you are pursued by Chef Skinner. Linguini helps the rats into the air ducts, where you escape from Skinner and move back into the kitchen, where the rats are preparing the ratatouille. As the ride concludes, you part with Remy and Gusteau while the rats feast on Remy's cooking. And in Paris, this attraction then leads you to the exit located in Bistro Chez Remy, a Ratatouille-inspired restaurant where guests dine rat-sized in Remy's restaurant.
So cute.
The Epcot attraction leads you back out into the Ratatouille Plaza, as it notably did not receive Bistro Chez Remy in the France Pavilion expansion. So now let's talk about the queue more specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So when the attraction opened, it utilized a virtual queue as well as the Genie Plus Lightning Lane system. However, in January of 2022, they discontinued the use of the virtual queue and opened a standby line with no single rider option. So the queue officially begins as guests enter a Parisian building in the Ratatouille Plaza area that appears to resemble a movie house, complete with ticket booths and film-style posters of different Ratatouille characters. As guests round the corner into the movie house, they then are taken back outside and in front of the building next to it, which has the illuminated Gusteau sign behind it and above on the roof in forced perspective. As they enter the chain switchbacks under a metal awning that is a combination of draped canvas and what looks to be copper that has been patinaed. Once guests make it back into the building, they follow the corridor into rooms with switchbacks decorated with wall sconces, walnut-colored wood wainscoting, and red damask wallpaper with patterns of rats, Remy and Emile, eating in front of an Eiffel Tower constructed of kitchen utensils. As guests exit through an archway, they move into 2 subsequent wallpaper rooms with narrow switchbacks that look exactly the same.
You're triggering me.
Eventually, before the wallpaper drives you absolutely mad, an archway gives way to stone stucco-like walls, and you find yourself outside at night on the roof of the building. This area is divided up with cast iron gates, a large glowing opaque skylight to the apartments beneath you, and the rooftops all around you. Featured high in the corner is the illuminated sign for Gusteau's restaurant again, and as you watch the Gusteau in the logo, it comes to life as it does in the film, and he speaks to you, teasing that Chef Remy is preparing something special tonight. As you continue through the roof area, you pass by different windows and rooftops to other apartments, and you hear the city come alive with screaming neighbors, dogs barking, etc. The theme Le Festin from the film plays in the background as you make your way through another archway and into a hallway of wood, drywall, and exposed brick that leads you to an artist's loft in Paris. The art on the walls depicts different still life paintings of food as well as landscapes in a similar art style to the 2D concept art for the film, which is also art that you can see in that like History of Rats short that Remy and Emile do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that.
Oh, yeah.
In the corner sits an easel with a painting that comes to life through projection, instructing you to group your party together for boarding and sort of the safety information that you need to know because you're approaching the boarding area. The narrow hallways of the artist loft give way to more stone walls as you wind around to an area to pick up your 3D glasses before wrapping around again to the boarding area. Here, you are magically the size of a rat, again on the rooftops of Paris by that Gusteau's sign, and boarding your trackless rat-shaped ride vehicles as an instrumental track of Le Festin plays in the background, and then you start the ride. So that's the cue. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff. Some good, some bad. On paper and on video walkthroughs of the standby queue, everyone would think that the theming and execution of this queue is quite good. And to some degree it is. But the reality of it is pretty bleak.
The reality.
There are details that I expected to be in tip-top shape that were extremely lacking. The storyline that carries through the queue and onto the ride, perfected by rides like Tower of Terror and Expedition Everest, didn't make much sense at all. And the themed queue that I just described is only about 40% or less of the actual line that you stand in. So let's talk about how they're letting us down in each of these areas more specifically.
Oh, tell me.
So we'll start with the storyline, because I feel like that's most foundational.
Mm-hmm.
First off, I'll just say it. The plot of the ride doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, when you started describing it, I realized that I didn't really know, like, when was this an alternate version of the story? Yeah, great
Kind
point.
of.
Yeah.
It follows the story of the film as if it were unfolding now, but also not exactly at all. Remy is a chef at Gusteau's and planning a meal to prepare, yet also stumbles into the kitchen where he shouldn't be.
Oh my God.
Skinner is here and chases you, but also the rats end up dining in the end. But they also cooked the food, but also there were human chefs.
Oh my God.
It is full of contradictions, and while very fun, what were we doing, folks? It kind of felt like they were like, yeah, sure, this is good enough. So with the storyline of the ride as fucking confusing as it is, it's no wonder that the queue story is all over the damn place.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And I never thought about it.
Not a bit. Neither did I.
I guess
And
I
then
just don't have a thought going through my mind when I'm in that ride and I just sit
Exactly.
there.
You're not thinking about it because you're like, oh my God, thank God I finally made it through the queue.
Yeah.
You're
take
willing.
anything.
You are willing this ride to work, even though it like doesn't,
Yeah.
because you're like, this has to be worth it.
Gotta work.
This has to be worth it. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the storyline of the queue. So we start off entering a movie house. Why? Are we supposed to be entering the film? If so, cool. But then the queue should be more like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, where we are being transported through time and space into a movie.
Yeah.
Instead, it feels like the only justification for entering a Parisian cinema is because Ratatouille is a movie. And even then, the cinema motif is completely abandoned as soon as you pass through the ticket booths and the character posters. Because before you know it, you're back outside and entering a different building, and then somehow it's night and you're on the roof. What was the point of the movie house? It feels like they were thinking of what building exterior would look nice in the plaza and not so much about how do we use this entrance as a gateway to the attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Why not have us enter Gusteau's restaurant? Or even if we're approaching a Parisian apartment building that contains the artist loft that we see later in the queue. There were better and more clear options in any direction, and it felt like they chose one that sits blurrily at the intersection of it's Gusteau's, it's an artist loft because we need to get to the roof of Gusteau's, and we're entering the world of a movie. How cool.
Oh my God.
It's not working.
Absolutely.
And speaking of those show/character posters up at the entrance to the attraction, hey, if the conceit of the attraction is that we are entering the timeline of the film as it is unfolding, why would we be advertising the characters? They would effectively be nobodies within this world, having yet to achieve any notoriety or fame like they do at the conclusion of the film. By having these character posters up, it makes the exterior of the attraction present in such a way that I thought the attraction took place in a timeline after the events of the film.
Right.
Similarly to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, Frozen Ever After, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, etc. As we board Peter Pan's flight in Magic Kingdom, we aren't advertising with a poster that, hey, Captain Hook is here, because the idea is that we haven't met him yet. We are going on the same journey with Peter and the Darling Children, much like how we are going on this journey with Remy, or so I think.
Wow.
I don't know, because this muddy alternate timeline thing in the attraction, the queue straddles this strange place that is honestly really subpar for storytelling for a Disney attraction. I've never seen something quite this messy in reality.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Perhaps the most unforgivable lack of storytelling in this attraction, though, is the magical transformation of guests to the size of rats by the time they board the ride vehicles. This is the most foundational concept of the ride to allow guests to adjust to the world of the attraction. When does it happen?
Oh my God.
Caroline, can you tell me when the precise moment is that it happens?
I have no idea.
You can't, can you? No. Because there is exactly nothing in the queue that makes it clear that that is what is happening.
No.
There is nothing to prepare you for the given circumstances of the attraction. No pre-show, no narration, not even a clever design trick. There are literally countless ways to achieve this touch of magic that I would expect from Disney. Hell, it could even be a cast member sprinkling imaginary pixie dust on you as you retrieve your 3D glasses and saying, by the time you reach the next room, you'll be the size of a rat. But instead, it feels like this incredibly important detail was just missed. How?
Wow.
I'm willing to cut some slack on shit, but not that one.
Yeah.
Storytelling is free. It just takes some creativity. And it seems even that was too high a cost here.
Wow.
All right, so now let's talk about the design and the theming here.
Let's do it. Oh my God, I'm living for this.
So, with the story of the queue being effectively fucked and all over the place, it's no wonder that the design and theming of the queue can feel that way as well. The design has to do double the lift here to try and make sense of the lack of story in order to sell this to guests. And what's kind of remarkable is that it doesn't even try at all. There are basically no transitional elements that take us through the different areas of the queue and blend one area to the next. We are outside, then at a movie house, then outside. Then there's red damask walls that could be in the movie house, but we technically went into the building next door. Then another red wallpaper room. Then another red wallpaper room. Then rooftop at night. Then artist loft. Then stone hallways. Then roof again, only we are small. It's just divided like that. It's the job of the design to make that pathway make sense, and furthermore, give guests a sense of where they are in the story of the attraction and in the literal line. A well-executed queue gives you an idea of how far you are to the boarding area, even when it's not in view.
Yes.
If there's a lot of detail and stuff to look at, it probably means that you're further away and they're giving you things to occupy the time so it doesn't feel like a long wait. If things start to simplify or become sparse apart from signage and instructions, they're giving you less to distract you so you keep moving because you're getting closer to the boarding area. In this queue, it is not clear where we are going at all. Probably because half the time I'm not 100% confident on where I've been. Every time I turned a corner, I didn't know what to expect. Would it be another apartment? The sewers from the film? Would it be more red wallpaper rooms from hell? Would we be back the fuck outside into those switchbacks? That's not good. It gets guests disoriented and disheartened. Two things you don't want in your guests at a theme park. The red wallpaper rooms from hell.
Oh, please.
These, I am convinced, are a cruel and unusual torture device.
Yes, they are. They are.
There is nothing to look at in these rooms apart from the wallpaper, which has a very simplistic repeated design. There are no decorations on the walls, no artwork. It's just walls as if it were a Parisian insane asylum owned by a rat chef.
Oh my God.
And then once you make it through the narrow switchbacks in one room, they have you enter another one that looks exactly the same. And then once you make it through two of those, they give you a third fucking one? Hell no. After spending 60% of the queue outside in chain switchback lines weaving in and out of the entire Ratatouille expansion area, entering these red rooms was pure evil. While the outside part was boring, there was at least shit to look at. Now you're in these monochromatic monotony things that just surprise you with more of the same around every corner.
Oh my God.
Fuck that. No.
When we were stuck in the outdoor portion, it started raining. So then by the time that we got into the red rooms, everybody was wet and like
and
humid
miserable.
And miserable in this tiny room, all just like giving off humidity inside this wallpapered room.
I'm not done on the wallpaper rooms. We're going to touch that again in the next section.
Great.
But before we move on from design and theming, I'm not quite ready to move on from the rat-sized magic transformation idea that I brought up in the storyline section, because it really could have been an incredible design moment. Disney is no stranger to playing with scale. They do it time and time again, from the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids playground to the Tinkerbell busy buggies in Tokyo Disney Sea, even down to the restaurant Bistro Chez Remy, where they have recreated Remy's restaurant from the end of the film, and you dine rat-sized. Why then did they not take advantage of this maze of a queue to sell the rat transformation? Every new room could slowly increase the scale until you finally reach the boarding area. And with the added benefit of not being able to see other areas of the queue from one to the next, I can't think of a queue that is more poised and ready for something like that. As you enter one room, you can't see behind you and you can't see ahead of you. It's perfect. Even in those 3 red wallpaper rooms, it could be as simple as you move into the next room and the wainscoting is slightly higher. The ceiling is slightly taller and the wallpaper is slightly larger. It was an opportunity for an incredible design that Disney just completely overlooked, or they passed on, and they shouldn't have.
Oh my God, get this guy a job. What a good idea.
Like, how do you take those 3 boring rooms and give them something interesting?
That's such a good idea.
Do that. Just bring everything higher.
I love it.
Is it too much to ask? I don't think so. So the last thing I'll talk about is the physical layout of the queue, which I've kind of spoken about by necessity already. So we've talked a lot about the queue once you are inside the show building. But as I've said before, that queue makes up a fraction of the actual line that you will be standing in. As the day progresses and the demand for the attraction increases, the wait time for this attraction goes up drastically, with delays caused by technical difficulties on the ride and a lower number of riders boarding per launch than what is typical for an attraction with this level of demand. The standby queue maxes out of its space easily. Stanchions are set up that weave you in and around the entire Ratatouille expansion area. When wait times are particularly high at peak times of the year, The line will fill almost the entirety of the plaza and stretch back toward the entrance of the area. It's a real shame because the beauty and the detail of the plaza can't be enjoyed on its own like in any of the other pavilions. It's nearly impossible to get up to the fun Ratatouille champagne bottle fountain or even just take in the sights as a non-rider. And yes, I understand that this pavilion has very limited space. But even still, it feels ill-prepared for the amount of demand that would be on this attraction and this area. With one way in and one way out, the area is completely eroded by the standby queue for Remy's Ratatouille adventure. When I visited the area, I rounded the corner right into a line for the ride. That's not how it should be.
Oof.
So the layout of this queue relies heavily on switchbacks. And if you don't know what a switchback is, these are those lines that reach an endpoint and then they turn back around on itself. I understand why. It's an incredibly small area, and switchbacks are the most effective way at taking a crowd of people and organizing them as quickly as possible. That being said, they are notoriously unfun to stand in. They force you to constantly face other guests, which can make you feel in some ways put on display. And if you're someone with any sort of social anxiety, that's a hard thing to swallow. They also mess with your perception of distance. Since you are weaving back and forth over the same area over and over, it is incredibly difficult to tell how far you've traveled and how much further you have left to go. And once you add people to the line, it's pretty impossible to see the full layout of the labyrinth when you're in it. For the outdoor portions of the queue, the switchbacks are made up of chains, and we all know people do stupid shit on chain stanchions.
Please.
Putting all of these things together, you're in for a pretty miserable queue where it doesn't feel like you're moving or progressing in a meaningful way. And the thing that you'll be looking at the most are your fellow park guests who are most likely not paying attention or doing something incredibly stupid on the chain dividers.
Yes, yes, yes.
The narrow hallways and the small rooms of the indoor portion of the queue, in particular, those that are in the red wallpaper rooms from hell, they are a real tragedy in terms of the physical layout of this queue. By the time you make it into the building and the themed area of the queue, the frustration and claustrophobia you feel in this area, entering what is essentially the same room again and again and again, is incredibly disheartening. I don't mean to exaggerate, but my spirit almost broke in these rooms.
I agree with you so much.
After spending an hour and a half making my way through the outdoor portion of the standby line, I was not prepared to make it inside this area and somehow feel more uncomfortable than when I was outside. There is hardly any airflow, and the switchbacks are so tight that you have no choice but to make friends with the people going the opposite way as you. And may God have mercy on your soul if there is a child nearby who uses these rooms as their opportunity to start acting out with their parents enabling them.
Connor, that's literally what happened to me. Literally.
Happened to me too.
Oh my God.
Happened to me too. This kid had a cowbell and decided that this was the place for a cowbell concert.
Stop it.
It was terrible.
Stop it. Oh my God, you can't make that up.
The smallness of these rooms, they trap heat, they amplify sound, and quite literally drive you insane.
And body odor, don't forget.
And body odor. God forbid if you're soaking wet and everyone smells like wet dog.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Wet
That's
dog
it.
and sweat, because
That's
you'll
the
smell
one.
it all. So yeah, in conclusion, I didn't have a great experience with the queue for Remy's Ratatouille adventure. And I think so much of it is because it failed to meet the expectations that it had set for itself. The physical layout of the queue ruins a guest's ability to enjoy the beauty of the area, to take in the vibes, as Caroline would say.
The vibes.
It traps you outside in the heat and in an endless weave of people, growing increasingly restless the longer they wait. The design and theming feels unfinished and disconnected from one area to the next, robbing guests of the detail, ingenuity, and magic that we have come to expect from modern queues. All of which stems from a confusing, slapdash first draft of a storyline that does not meet the standard that Disney set for themselves. I cannot help but look at all of this and feel disappointed. After 30 plus years without a new attraction in the World Showcase, increased attention on more thrilling attractions with height restrictions in other parks, about 30% of this park being closed off behind construction walls as a result of years of neglecting real and meaningful additions to this theme park, there was almost too much pressure on this new expansion to the park. And maybe that's why the mediocrity of the queue and, frankly, of the attraction sticks out so much for me. Because at the end of my day in Epcot, I asked myself, was it worth it? Was it worth the 2.5 hours in a standby line? Was it worth the time and money and construction delays? Was it worth the crowds and the blisters on my feet from booking it from one end of the park to the other? For Disney, creating effectively an all-day gridlock death trap scenario for their guests, most notably kids and families, at the back of this park? No. Disney dropped the ball on this. Not as hard as they have with other things in the past, and certainly not as hard as they probably will in the future. But this isn't good. It feels like Disney was not prepared for what they were trying to do in this area. That one variable after the next made the challenge a bit too much for them as it unfolded. And so corners were cut and budgets moved around and capitalism capitalized and mediocrity took root as a result. Either that or they simply didn't care. And I'm really fearful if it's the latter.
Ooh.
That's my rant.
That's one of my favorite rants that you've ever done.
Really?
Yes.
I hated that line. I hated it so much.
And I don't want to discourage people, but I had a nearly identical experience to you. Like, I really
Lightning
did.
lane that ride or don't ride it.
Yes, I would say, first of all, I had a nearly identical experience to you, and we picked up our 3D glasses, and the ride broke down.
Yep.
And
it's a tech-heavy ride.
That was the thing that almost broke my sanity that day. We came back and rode it later the day. They gave us, a lightning lane for later in the day, and we went back. But what we did this past time, because we all swore we would never do standby again, is they're offering an extra hour at the end of the night sometimes for resort hotel guests. We made that the last thing that we could squeeze in right before it closed, and there was nobody, and I had a delightful time because I got to walk through the red rooms quickly and didn't stop. And it was great.
The red rooms will kill you.
The red rooms,
they are no joke.
Red rooms.
They are no
Jane
joke.
Eyre, that red room is nothing compared to this one, baby.
This is yellow wallpaper, telltale heart. It's not good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's really, really bad.
I'm embarrassed that I never noticed as a big Disney nerd that we were never given the story to support the fact that we are rat-sized. I'm kind of ashamed of the fact that I just went in kind of la, 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 because like you said, you are so worn down mentally that
you'll just accept it.
It doesn't even matter.
You are literally willing yourself for this ride to make sense. Your brain is filling in all of the sloppy gaps that this ride leaves for you because you're trying to say this has to be worth it.
Yeah.
This has to have been worth my time.
Yeah.
And it's not. It wasn't. If the line is over 2 hours long, do not ride it. Do not stand in the standby line.
I wouldn't even wait there for an hour. I couldn't. I would not recommend.
That red room will get you.
That was fantastic.
There's 3 red rooms that'll get you. The red rooms came up in all 3 sections.
Oh my God.
I like to say that Disney does a really, really good job on stuff. And they fucked this one up. And yes, on paper, and when you go through the walkthrough videos and everything like that, it looks so lovely.
And you hear the Le Festin, and you're like, oh, it's so pleasant. Yeah.
But when you're standing there in a long time, you have the opportunity to really sit here and start picking it apart. And when you, it's kind of one of the things where as soon as you just scratch the surface, the whole ride starts crumbling down.
I never thought about the psychology of the switchbacks before and how much my queue experience deteriorates when I have to continuously look at the other guests. It is so interesting, and I never thought about it before.
When you think about other rides, there is one attraction It's in Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. It used to be called Corkscrew Hill. And it's a pretty claustrophobic sort of situation. But it is a weaving stone tunnel and has all stone theming and everything. But you're never switching back. It's just like one hallway that you go really, really far through. I would take that over this any day.
Yeah.
Because even then, I'm like, oh, I'm moving forward. I don't have someone to the right of me. I don't have someone to the left of me. I can lean on a wall. I feel like kind of enclosed, and I feel like I am progressing as opposed to I move forward and then, oh, now I'm going back the way that I came. And then I'm moving forward again, and then, oh, I'm going back. Like it constantly feels like you're regressing.
Yes, fascinating. So interesting.
But sometimes feels like you're constantly moving because the lines are like that.
Right.
They can fit
its
more
ups and
people.
downs. Yeah.
But honestly, when I was in this, it didn't feel like it was moving either. It felt awful, and it didn't feel like it was moving.
Yeah, it's very disheartening. Disheartening is totally the right word.
Yeah.
Oof.
So pick us up from this. Tell us about a good cue.
I will. So let's talk about another relatively new Disney attraction that has an absolutely fantastic queue, and a queue that honestly changes the definition of what a queue is in the first place. And that is Rise of the Resistance, which I have experienced in Walt Disney World and Hollywood Studios, but is also in Disneyland in California as well. So my first time riding Rise of the Resistance was on my trip to Walt Disney World in August 2022. It was my first trip back after the pandemic. Although I was absolutely thrilled by the portion of the attraction that takes place strapped into a trackless escape pod vehicle, I was blown away by portions of the attraction that are technically the queue when you are not yet buckled into your ride vehicle but are fully immersed in the ride's story and its characters. Story scenes surround you at several points during your quote-unquote wait, and the line is completely blurred between attraction, queue, and pre-show. I honestly think it's the best concept Disney has come up with in years. So pause. If you have not experienced Rise of the Resistance yet, I will not give away details of the seated ride portion of the attraction, but I will be giving away some incredible moments from the queue that are just as important. If you want to save the surprise, I highly suggest you just stop the episode here or, I don't know, skip to our closing remarks. I will never forget my first time experiencing this attraction, and I really want that for each and every one of you. It is really special. Like, take me seriously. I won't be offended. You don't need to listen to this right now. Okay. If you're still with me, just going to cite some sources. My new favorite Star Wars source, Wikipedia, as always.
Yeah.
And then on YouTube, The Diz, Theme Park Insider, and Finding the Force all have fantastic walkthrough, ride-through, and some behind-the-scenes tidbits. So, background information. Rise of the Resistance opened in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World on December 5th, 2019, and in Disneyland on January 17th, 2020. So right before it all went downhill for the world. Rise of the Resistance was first announced during the 2015 D23 Expo in Anaheim, along with the first announcement of Galaxy's Edge, as guests being put in the middle of a climactic battle between the First Order and the Resistance. Its official title wasn't revealed at that time. It was revealed in November 2018 at a Destination D event. Here's the overview of the attraction from the official Walt Disney World website. The Resistance needs your help. Hidden in the forest outside Black Spire Outpost, the Resistance is gathering recruits for a secret mission. With the First Order desperate to extinguish the spark of the Resistance, the mission is bound to have unexpected twists and turns. When your transport is captured by an imposing First Order Star Destroyer filled with legions of stormtroopers, and even Kylo Ren, you're going to need all the help you can get. Fortunately, a covert team of Resistance fighters, including Rey and BB-8, is at the ready to give you a fighting chance to escape and a chance for the Resistance to rise. So, before we talk about this attraction queue specifically, I want to talk about the 4 things that I think make a great queue. Number 1, story. Guests should get lots of information from the queue. The queue should establish either a new story in the case of, say, Expedition Everest, or further an existing one that guests are already familiar with, or kind of refamiliarize you with it in the case of, say, Peter Pan's Flight, through the use of setting, character appearances, narration, video, imagery, music, or all of the above. Number 2, guest comfortability and experience. Guests should have generally positive feelings of physical and mental or emotional comfort while in the queue. Please see the Red Room.
The Red Rooms.
The Red Room. Elements that contribute to this comfort include the physical spacing and layout of the queue, temperature regulation, low physical demand or even the ability to rest, soundscapes and music that won't make you feel like you're going insane, and a line that moves relatively consistently. Number 3, immersion. This is where design and theming come in. The queue should take place in a realistically depicted and detailed setting appropriate to the attraction. So even if the queue isn't transporting you to the literal setting of the attraction itself, it should be the best version of the setting that reflects the ride, like the Chinese Theater for Runaway Railway, and makes sense when matched with the story of the attraction itself. Hello, why is Remy's Ratatouille Adventure in a movie theater?
And then a roof.
And a roof. And number 4, fun factor. The queue should feature something to make the time pass quickly for guests, whether it's Easter eggs, interactive elements, interesting changes in the setting as the queue progresses, exciting tech elements, and more and more. Now, I can think of a few Disney queues that don't get high marks in every single category here, but they're still really great queues. Rise of the Resistance, however, knocks it out of the park in all 4 of these elements.
It almost turns the queue into a walk-through attraction.
Exactly. So before we get into how, let's just literally walk through the storyline of the queue because it's an arc and event in and of itself. Rise of the Resistance takes place after the events of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, and before Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, Disney actually wrote up an official crawl, a la the crawl that happens at the beginning of every Star Wars movie, and it's out there for you to find, but it's not featured anywhere, which is interesting, but here's what it says. It is a dark time for the Resistance. Following the devastating Battle of Crate, the Freedom Fighters have fled with General Leia Organa to an undisclosed location. Meanwhile, hunted by the First Order and Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, a band of Resistance supporters has established a temporary outpost on the remote planet of Batuu, thanks to scouting by Resistance spy Vi Murati. Here on the Outer Rim, the Resistance is rebuilding and searching for recruits to join the cause and help save the galaxy from tyranny. So here we go. Guests enter the Rise of the Resistance queue underneath the entrance to a Resistance base, a turret owned by Oga Gara of the Cantina fame. The queue winds through a rocky and plant-filled outdoor portion, complete with a waterfall, before entering the cave-like winding hallways of the base. Guests pass cargo, boxes of supplies, gear, and maps as they go deeper and deeper into the base. You now truly start to get the sense that you are new recruits to the Resistance as you enter a control center where BB-8 awaits. A transmission comes in the form of a hologram of Rey who explains that guests will be boarding transports to rendezvous with Leia Organa on Pakara, since Resistance fighters, including Finn, have infiltrated a Star Destroyer. This is a First Order ship. The Triangle ships, they're the bad guys, if you are not familiar with Star Wars. And that is headed to Batuu, where you are currently located. Lieutenant Beck, who we meet for the first time on this ride, confirms via a screen transmission that he will be transporting you and that your ship is ready. Poe Dameron's transmission appears on a screen as well, confirming that his squadron of X-Wings will be escorting you to Pakara. The doors of the control center open, and you walk across a small outdoor courtyard towards the waiting transport ship. A full-size physical ship.
And Poe Dameron's ship is there, and BB-8 is in the droid section, and he's moving around in the droid section because he's. Oh my god!
Yes,
that was magic. It's magic.
Once boarded, guests find railings on the ship to hold onto, and an animatronic Beck sits at the controls in the front. The transport and X-Wings are suddenly surrounded by First Order TIE fighters, and you can see the battle unfolding from the windows all around the transport. The Star Destroyer Finn & Co. have infiltrated appears and pulls the transport inside with its tractor beam. A First Order transmission appears on the screens, and General Hux orders that the transport prepare to be boarded. The doors of the transport open, and a First Order officer ushers you into the hangar of the Star Destroyer, which is filled with stormtroopers waiting in formation. The hangar also features freestanding stormtrooper animatronics and a First Order fleet transport vehicle, which is the ride vehicle you will be boarding later. You are guided towards a corridor and told to prepare for your interrogation. This is the final typical line-standing portion of the queue. First Order officers organize guests into groups of 8 in a loading bay manned by more stormtroopers. Inside the interrogation cell, Kylo Ren and General Hux appear on a bridge above you. Kylo swears he will obtain the secret location of the resistance base, where you were headed. It's sexy. It's very, very sexy from
yes,
you.
the people, he's like, you have something. I want it from you.
And the whole room like stops and you're like, oh my God.
and all of the like adults are like, I'll give it to you.
I'm like, sure, I'll tell you anything. But he's called away. Suddenly, the wall next to you is sliced into by resistance fighters, aka the cast members who will load you into your ride vehicle, and you are led to First Order fleet vehicles that will hopefully transport you to escape pods set up by Finn. And then the actual ride begins.
And then the ride starts.
Okay. All right.
And ironically, all of my favorite and, in my opinion, the most magical moments of this attraction have happened already in the queue.
Agree.
And the walkthrough pre-show stuff. Like the ride itself is fantastic. I would have been content with just if we had ended. I'd be like,
bravo.
If they put us in the prison cell and then they were like, all right, that's it. I'd be like,
bravo.
Damn, that was worth it.
Oh, man. Okay, so let's start with story and how this queue fantastically tells the story. So first of all, the stakes of this story are built and communicated wordlessly in tandem with the design, even in the traditional line-standing portion of the queue before reaching the command center with Rey. The design of the regular standing queue portion transitions from nature to cave, to cargo, to maps, to lockers filled with gear, to the command center, creating the feeling that you are descending deeper into the resistance base and the stakes are rising. The appearances of technology keep building until you reach that command room with Rey and BB-8, and then you are fully a part of the resistance. This transition is one you feel as you move along the queue before the first pre-show scene. It's communicated very subtly through the soundscapes of the queue as well, as sounds also transition from nature to droid beeps to full transmissions from members of the resistance and the sounds of ships taking off and landing. We are fed the story using every medium: sound, performers, projections, animatronics, video, motion simulators, and physical sets and effects. In the first real pre-show scene of the queue with Rey and BB-8, Disney utilizes animatronics, screens, physical sets and effects, and projections in this one scene alone. And in the use of all of these mediums, Disney is going for epic or nothing.
Yes.
The Stormtrooper hangar is one of the most stunning visuals in the US parks, period. And there is no illusion work here. Each of the 50 Stormtroopers is a practical figure. Also, we are introduced to characters we know and love as quickly as possible. BB-8, Rey, and Poe all in quick succession in the first scene.
Yep.
This gets us bought into the story and excited to feel chosen by these characters that we love so much. Like, my friend took a picture of me on my bachelorette literally saluting Rey because I was so excited to see her. And it wasn't even my first time going on this attraction. Screens are utilized to great effect during the transport scene as well, allowing us to see and hear from Poe even though he isn't on the ship with us. This keeps us tied to something familiar as we are being introduced to new characters like Beck and being brought into somewhere kind of scary and intimidating. Another great thing about the story introduction here: there is tons of information for the guests who want it and maybe are already familiar with the Star Wars universe. And if you are too thrilled and overwhelmed by the experience, read me, to really, really listen to the details that Rey shares, you still get the important part. You're part of the resistance now, and you gotta get out of here. If you brought someone to the queue of this attraction who couldn't give you a single piece of information about any Star Wars film, the experience would still make sense to them because of the cues offered by the music and the physical setting. You feel danger and foreboding as you enter the Star Destroyer, and really that's all you need in order to make the vehicle escape portion, the ride, exciting. This queue really does a fantastic job of not excluding Star Wars newbies.
Yeah, in fact, I would probably venture to say it goes even further to serve as an entry point for those newbies.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, I was already kind of in my Star Wars era, but this I do feel like played a big part in it. Absolutely.
Like, there are people that I would say would come in not being a Star Wars fan and would leave and be like, I want to watch some of these movies.
Yeah, I agree. And then interestingly, the queue also has really fun things for more diehard Star Wars fans as well. So
Absolutely.
the intersystem transport ship that you board to escape Batuu, it's brand new for this. It's the ITS. It's never been seen in a Star Wars film and it has been created especially for this attraction. Like, how fun for Star Wars fans to have a new vehicle. This touches a bit on the immersion and fun factor portions that we will get to soon, but being rescued from the interrogation cell by live cast members is so much more exciting and stakes building than the usual like rebellion that we'll get from ride hosts and other attractions. So even though we love that Dr. Seeker has rebelled and unlocked the time rovers for us on Dinosaur, having the actual good guys cut through a wall to break you out of captivity, there really is no beating that. I love that moment so much. It might be one of my favorites ever.
It's like the second coming of your cast member beating the mobster on the Great Movie Ride.
It is. It is the same. It is. You're so right. It is. Yes, absolutely agree. And it just achieves that Disney goal of putting you right smack dab in the center of the story.
Yeah.
Next, let's talk about guest comfortability and experience, which I think is really fantastic in this queue. So, folks, something that really pushes the basic standing in line portion of this queue ahead of the rest for me is the very subtle seating option built into the cave hallway portion. Long lengths of ledge built into the stone walls and the tops of large cargo boxes offer guests the opportunity to sit down. This is an absolute game changer for such a popular attraction with long wait times like this one that won't have you seated in a vehicle for quite some time. I have seen this seating turn the day around for different members of my party. It changed everything.
This is the opposite of where Remy's Ratatouille adventure was, where it's like Rise of the Resistance knew the demand and anticipated even more demand than what they expected.
Yes.
And it was the right move.
Yes. This line also moves. I've experienced the Lightning Lane once and the standby queue twice. Both times that I waited standby, my group was under some kind of either time constraint or hitting a pretty exhausting part of the day. And I never got that torturous, like, get me out of here Red Room feeling that you can get when long wait times, stress, and the afternoon slump hit.
Is the Red Room?
The Red Room is the new thing.
Is the Red Room a new thing? Are we going to have to do a Red Room, like, t-shirt?
Yes, we are. There are also water fountains and garbage cans. This is so important. I think they are actually very well integrated into the design of the queue, but I also appreciate the fact that Disney was like, okay, even if this is noticeable and not 100% Star Wars accurate, people need water and a place to get rid of their trash. It is the correct choice every time. Thank you. Coolness and airflow can tend to be issues in some of these smaller cave-like queues, but this queue opens up often enough that it never gets too claustrophobic. And there are some really solid vents that I remember standing under during the switchback. Now that I know that phrase, I love that. During the switchback portion, which, speaking of, there is basically only one switchback portion of this queue, and it passes very quickly.
It keeps you moving forward and like progressing so that you feel like you've been somewhere.
Exactly. Once you enter the control center, transport, and Star Destroyer portions, you are fully cool and air-conditioned and have plenty of opportunities to roam a little bit more freely if you're feeling too packed in. Or if that thing happens to you where you're near a party that is really annoying and you're like, oh my God, I'm stuck with them forever. No, just let them pass ahead of you during either of those three portions and you will lose them for good.
Yep.
It's incredible. Ultimately, so many portions of this queue allow freedom of movement that you won't really find anywhere else in Walt Disney World or Disneyland. The portions of the regular standing queue guests first experience in the caves are short and tightly winding, giving the impression that you are moving quickly since you are not traveling down long stretches of line, these switchbacks. This gets you through the early cave and cargo rooms quickly, preventing boredom in spaces that are less visually interesting. And although the first outdoor portion of the queue can be brutal during hot, sunny days, and side note, I have actually never been on a line so long for this ride that I've had to wait outside, I think this is some nice variation for folks who aren't as big of a fan of more confined spaces. I think this queue variation also makes the wait feel like it is passing more quickly because you're really changing environments pretty often. Let's talk about immersion, so the design and theming element of all of this. I mean, how can you beat this? The immersion of this queue goes so far as to include live performers, basically. They're cast members. They're not hired as performers, but still. We'll talk more about this in the fun factor portion, but talk about making the setting come alive. All of the detail-oriented things that should be happening anywhere in a Disney park are happening here. The Batuu Resistance Outpost portion of the queue looks worn, ragtag, and weathered, like they've set up camp there really quickly, while the Star Destroyer is clean, crisp, and cold-looking. The 3 distinct settings of the queue are all accurate, realistic, and simply fun to be in and to look at. Moving through such distinct physical spaces and even back outdoors between the control room and the transport ship is so thrilling. It adds a level of realism to the experience that is truly unmatched, and these spaces come alive. You're not in a queue that winds through a transport ship. You're riding in one that you can actually move about in.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that when you look outside the transport windows as you take off, the setting will reflect the time of day that you're experiencing the attraction in. So if you're riding in the evening, when you enter the transport, it will be evening outside the windows. Chef's kiss. Let's also talk about the incredible effect of entering the transport vehicle through the outdoor courtyard and then having those same transport doors open into the hangar of the Star Destroyer.
This is my favorite moment of the entire ride because so much of our experience of Disney attractions, especially as adults, we are robbed of the magic because we're constantly anticipating how they're doing this, how they're doing that. And when you board this ship that's like you only see one side of it and it's up against the wall, you're like, okay, great. So we're going to enter through this side and then the opposite side is going to open up and that's going to be the next show building that we move into. My jaw hit the floor when the same door that I walked in opened up and I was not where I started. And
that was the thing that all the adults in my group the first time were like, what is going on? Like that for a kid, they would probably be like, whoa, cool. But like, they would have been cool if it opened up on the other side too. Yeah.
For an adult, I have never had that moment of Disney magic
in a long time.
At that high of a level in a very, very long time
It's
where
true.
I felt like a kid and anything was possible.
Yeah, especially because it's opening into such a foreboding situation too. It just ups the ante of that unbelievable moment. Yeah.
And I know that was a meeting in Disney Imagineering where they were like, no, the same transport door has to open.
Yeah.
We have to know that our guests are going to try and get ahead of us and we can't let them. We need them to go on the ride with us. And they fucking did it.
Yeah.
And it's the coolest thing I've seen in a very, very long time.
I agree.
And it's so simple.
The effect is created through motion simulation combined with a simple turntable. So as you ride the transport, the interior turntable is disguised by the flying motion of the transport. So when you also have turned on the turntable and you're kind of locking into the new entrance, that's when the transport is landing. So that kind of lock in is disguised and you don't know what's happening.
It's genius.
It's a simple trick done to amazing effect, and it really keeps you on edge. As Conor just described, you fully expect to be boarded by the First Order through the other set of doors. Unbelievable. To that effect, simple technology, simple tricks, or technology already employed by Disney, for example, like the Musion effect projection, which is the one used in the Haunted Mansion ballroom. This is used when Kylo Ren and General Hux speak to you in the interrogation room. This tech is leveled up. For example, in the interrogation room, the use of shadows really increases the effect that the two characters are really in the room. I think there were people at first who actually thought they were performers because there are shadows when they enter and exit the room.
Yeah.
Motion simulators don't just shake us, they turntable us to a new portion of the queue. Animatronics stand in a room with guests and live cast members, and this is all in the queue, not even the seated ride portion of the attraction.
And not to mention that gigantic screen that is the airlock of the hangar bay that is so large that your body, like your eyes don't even compute that it's a screen.
Yeah, it fully looks, you just are like, that's a window. I'm in space.
You're like, that's just a
I'm in
window to space. Because you're like, there's no way that a screen is that big.
So true.
Nope, it's that big.
It's so true. The use of score and soundscapes is also top tier here. Like I said, we start transitioning from soundscapes to the score in the briefing room with Ray, and the score continues to play as you walk outside towards the transport, coming to a crescendo with your capture. The hangar has ominous music that sounds like a rumble or a moan. It's very quiet, as you're mostly hearing ships racing past outside. But then the score picks up again as you were assigned to cells and comes to a huge crescendo as you are broken free and board your vehicle. Also, it is an absolutely excellent score, and I always leave the attraction humming it. All right, let's talk about the fun factor, like as if we haven't already anyway. So, okay, we have a literal motion simulator as part of the queue.
Yep.
Like, what could possibly be more fun than a ride before the ride? It's one of my favorite, actually, no, I think it is my favorite part of the whole attraction. Yet at its core, it is there to move you from one room to another.
Yeah.
The tech,
so good.
The tech. The movements of these animatronics are unbelievable. Lieutenant Beck especially is so smooth and realistic. He is an A1000 animatronic, the most articulate and lifelike in the game.
And he has to be because you're so close to him. He has to be amazing.
I have gone right up there, and it is like he's a Mon Calamari.
Yeah,
and you're just like, he is. I don't know what that means, but he is.
That is an alien.
Yeah.
In the same way as when you get close to the shaman on Navi River Cruise, where it's like, I can't even compute that a robot is doing this.
Terrifying also.
yeah, slightly.
And like Connor mentioned, that screen in the hangar room that you're just like, it's a window to space. It's not a screen. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's a window to space.
So truly, if nothing else, the novelty and impressiveness of the tech in this queue will keep even Star Wars haters interested and impressed. So live performers, they're cast members, but really they're performers in this. As we have said time and time again on Poor Unfortunate Podcast, they are an absolute game changer. Not only do they bring immersion to the next level, but cast members are the key to creating core memories and unique experiences for guests that they cannot get anywhere else. Should you choose to interact with the cast members, and I totally recommend that you do aboard the Star Destroyer, you will be pleasantly surprised at the fun they seem to be having. On my most recent visit, one of the First Order officers talked about throwing the kids on the line out through the exhaust pipe. And one YouTube commenter described the way that he gave one of the First Order officers a command, and the cast member repeated the sentence and walked away as if he had Jedi mind tricked them. That is Disney magic.
Oh my God. When I went on this ride, we had a family that had a young son and a young daughter.
Oh my God, what are you going to tell me?
And the First Order officer went up to the boy and was like, do you know the location of the Resistance base? And he caved immediately and is like nodding his head. And his little sister is like whacking him. And then the officer turns to her and is like, will you talk? And she's like, no. And I cried. And then once we got into our ride vehicle and we're escaping, and this is slightly spoiler, but there's a droid that's like at the front of your ride vehicle, and she was seated with her brother in the very front row right behind that droid. And as we're escaping, she leans forward and she slaps the droid and she goes, come on, you can do it, you can do it. And
Bye-bye.
I was done.
Bye-bye.
And she had her little like Princess Leia. Her hair was like in little buns.
Oh my God.
I was like, this is truly magic.
Oh my God.
And there's no other ride that gives them this chance to ride and play
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah. Yep. And these cast members, you know, they're ride operators, but they're really taking their job to the next level. So first of all, I say kudos and applause and thank you to them.
Yeah.
And I also say to Disney, I don't know, consider taking it to the next level. And why don't we sprinkle in some people who are literally just there to be performers as well?
Yeah.
I am ready for it. I'm ready for it. So these fun factor elements of this queue, live interactions and a motion simulator, allow you to have a different experience every time you ride. You could choose to stand somewhere different during the transport section to, like we were discussing, get a closer look at Lieutenant Beck, or towards the back to watch the TIE fighters through the back window. You could try telling the First Order officers that you will never abandon the Resistance. You could ask them questions. No two visits will ever be the same. And side note, this queue is also home to some fun Easter eggs for the very keen-eyed Star Wars fan who might be able to recognize specific pilot uniforms, helmets, etc. So we've got the classic Easter eggs in there as well. So now that we've covered the way that this queue absolutely smashes those 4 parameters, I just want to say that I think this queue is the key to the future of turning things around at the Disney parks.
Agreed.
Like I said, Rise of the Resistance blurs the line between queue, pre-show, and attraction, and I think this is the future. I have faced some pretty intimidating wait times for this attraction, and actually even some slightly disappointing experiences in the ride portion itself, broken animatronics and the ride being stopped. Yet my opinion of this attraction has remained kind of untouchable because of the completely immersive queue experience, which I think at this point we could even stop calling a queue once you enter the control room with Rey and BB-8, even though there actually is still some line waiting that happens after it. You forget all about that.
It's a walkthrough.
Yep.
It's a walkthrough attraction.
The blurring of the queue attraction line also creates an extended experience for guests, harkening back to 20-minute-long attractions like the Great Movie Ride. Not only does this give you that bang-for-your-buck, high-value feeling and experience, but it maintains the balance of guests inside attractions and walking around the park and inside stores and restaurants, etc., which we've talked about on here before. Now, don't get me wrong. Disney does its best with other attraction queues to keep guests entertained. We create our own car before a test track. Now, that's part of the attraction too, but still.
Not for long.
Yeah, right.
Because it's under refurb.
Right, yeah. We play interactive games while we're waiting for the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. And we have incredible details to look at and walk through before attractions like Tower of Terror. So I've heard. We all know I've never been on it.
She'll go. She needs to. Honestly, though, you could walk with me through
and
the line.
And then I can take the
chicken
exit, sure. But entertainment and design details are not the same as immersion that requires your full presence and participation. Queues like Rise of the Resistance bring me so into the moment. I'm never thinking about the next ride or the real world or really anything except the story unfolding in front of me, because there is something that changes when you are immersed in a story on foot without the distance and safety of a vehicle. This type of queue, or let's say this type of experience, feels so much like many original Disney attraction ideas which had walkthrough elements. Attractions that originally had partial or full walkthrough elements are absolute classics now, like Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean. They are the heart of the parks, and attractions like Rise of the Resistance, through its queue alone, are making a grab at getting back to the heart of what Disney attractions should be: immersive, innovative, and unpredictable, of course, in a safe and repeatable way, and a moment in time that cannot happen anywhere else. Queues like this one will also serve to push forward the innovation happening within the ride portions of attractions. Because after a queue like this one, there is no way the ride experience can't take the attraction one step even further in terms of immersion, technological innovation, and just plain magical thrills and tricks. This proves to me that the queue really is the thing.
I love that ride.
I do too. I freaking do too. I push people whenever I'm there to our absolute limits of like time constraints and exhaustion to get them on that ride, and it's worth it every time. Every time.
I know. That's why I was like, you have to on the Bachelorette trip. I'm like, they've got to do it.
We circled. We were like, it was time
to
leave Hollywood Studios, and I was like, please, because the ride had been down all day. I was like, please, can we pass by one more time? And they had just opened it, and like, I can't even explain how happy I was. And then we sat on the freaking bench and everybody was fine. We sat on the bench in the line and everybody got a second wind. and it was great.
I've never experienced anything like it.
Me neither. And the contrast between these two now is so jarring and funny to me.
Yeah. When you think about how the story of the ride is the cue here.
Yeah, and it's a theatrical experience happening all around you. And then Remy can't even let you know that you've shrunk to the size of a rat.
Remy can't let you know that you shrunk to the size of the rat, or that this is the events of the story, or also something made up.
Or that the red room might be the last thing that you ever see before you snap.
I mean, I think we need to have like a scale of like red room to Rise of Resistance bench. Like,
yeah. How are you doing?
Where are you mentally?
Yeah.
Are you in the red room, or are you on the Rise of Resistance
cool,
bench?
rocky bench in a cave?
I'm perpetually in the red room right now. America is in the red room.
Oh.
America's in the red room right now.
Oh.
That's pretty much it that we've got for you. Thank you all for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked what you heard, please remember to hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. That way all of our episodes download to your device and you don't miss out on anything. And then this is that moment, if you haven't already, hit 5 stars, leave a written review, just a couple of words. We read everything that you say, and it means the world to us.
It does.
And then this could also be that moment where you just go to like the 3 dots or whatever and hit share episode and just send it to a couple friends. Just be like, hey, listen to this. See what happens.
Easy. And while you're on your phone, just head over to social media. We're at Poor Unfortunate Podcast on everything. Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and TikTok. That's also a great way to share the podcast with somebody that you know. If they're big into Instagram, we put up little teasers of the episodes. Maybe there's one that you think they might enjoy. Just DM it to them. You just never know. Leave us a comment because we also love to hear from you. And social media is just a great way to find out a little bit more about what you all want to hear about, which episodes really excite you. And if you want even more Poor Unfortunate Podcast in your life, please join our private Facebook group, the Poor Unfortunate Fam. We have over 100 members in there. We discuss every episode. I got some fantastic tips about taking a solo Disney trip from one of our listeners, which I might have to do one day. And it's just such a generally fantastic community. It's such a great way for Conor and I to find out who is listening out there and what you want more of. And we take everything that our fan members say super seriously, and it means the world to us and is just another great way to help shape and support the podcast. So we would absolutely love to meet you. If you haven't followed us yet, or if you haven't joined, please come introduce yourself. We want to say hello to you.
And if you're looking for merch, it's vacation season. You might be heading to the parks. You might be going down the beach. You need some hats, t-shirts, things like that, water bottles. Head to the Poor Unfortunate shop. It's poorunfortunatepodcast.com/shop. We've got everything that you could be looking for. And as I always say, it does take us a little bit of money to keep the podcast up and running and coming to you. We do have a PayPal account. It is linked in our episode description and in the website links on our social media accounts. Truly, anything that you have to spare goes a long way for us. It could be $1, $5, $10. More than that, it could be a one-time donation. It could be a monthly donation. It all just goes right back into the podcast, helping us keep it free and ad-free for the most part. Because how many podcasts are you really getting that are completely ad-free nowadays? Let's be real.
Tell them.
And to all of our monthly donors, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This would not happen without you. Alrighty. That's it for this. Yeah, we'll be back next. I don't know. We'll be back next for another Caroline What's New news update, and then for a showdown that we have to figure out what we're doing.
So let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
If you follow us on social media and DM us, maybe we'll take your suggestion.
Yeah. Until then, Beluga Savruga.